So I would like us to start. I would like us to start, ladies and gentlemen, and normally for our start, we'll start with a word of prayer. Then after that, we'll do our introductions. I can see we can just briefly, you give me your name and what are your expectations for this sort of training, so that we should be able to see whether we've met your objectives at the end of the training, which I'm very confident that we should have met and even exceeded, considering that we are in a field that is dynamic, and we look at how do we keep on enriching, how do we keep on learning, how do we keep on making our processes better, making our thinking, our line of thought to just adapt to the dynamics of the workplace, and also generally where we are. So I would request one of us to lead us in a word of prayer, a volunteer kindly, in a short prayer, then we take it up from there. Volunteer. Jen or Mary?
Let us pray. Thank you, God, for the blessing of this day. Thank you, God, for your guidance and for your protection, dear Lord. Thank you for giving us this learning opportunity this morning, dear Lord. Pray that you may help us, dear Lord, understand and keep learning and keep a positive attitude towards the learning. Even guide the trainer, dear Lord, that he may deliver and articulate the things we're supposed to learn well. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Right. Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much for the prayer. So I would like us to do a round of introductions. Briefly, you tell us your name and what is your expectation for in today's training. So I'll be your trainer. I'll first of all introduce myself. My name is HRP James Wanyama. I'm a HR trainer and consultant with a practicing certificate. And I'm also the executive director at the Institute of Pension Management. And I'm glad that I'll be facilitating this session today on the Iceberg model of competency, and looking forward for a very insightful session with you guys. Thank you. So next we'll just take it randomly. So we'll move to Mary. Mary can say hi to us and tell us what is your expectation from today's in today's training. Mary, can you hear us?
Sorry about that. It's my bandwidth. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Kaifere. I'm a HR generalist. I work for a company called Kinder Engineering. I'm glad to be here to learn.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. Next, we move to Lawi, HR Lawi.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Lawi, HR, working with Nila Pharmaceutical, based in Nairobi.
Thank you, Nila. Thank you, Lawi, for your introduction. Next, we move to Robert. There are two Roberts, so we start with Robert M. Robert M, kindly, if you can unmute yourself and say hi to the other professionals. Sorry. Your connectivity is not seamless. Maybe we can move to Robert Okumu.
Good morning, James and colleagues.
Robert Okumu.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Okay, that's better. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, my name is Robert Okumu. I work for National Council for Population and Development. I look for, as my expectation, I look forward to having a discussion and also mostly focusing on the practical application of our topic today in the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Next, let's hear from Jane.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, my name is Janet Dolo. I work with the SAMI as HR Ed. I'm looking forward to be able to apply the model in practical terms. Practically, or now it can be implemented here.
All right. Thank you, Janet. Next, we have there's another Jane there. Then there's another. Then there's Lavender.
Okay, this is Jane. My name is Jane. I am an HR consultant, and I'm just looking forward to learning. Thank you.
Welcome, Jane. Next, we have Lavender. Lavender, kindly say hi to us.
Good morning, everyone. I'm CHRP Lavender Mbogo. I work for a company called AHN Kenya Limited, and I'm hoping to get a better understanding of the model and how we can use it in our organization. Thank you.
Great. Next, we listen to Benjamin. Benjamin, if you can hear us.
Good morning. Good morning, Mwalimu.
Good morning, Benjamin. How are you?
Okay. My name is Benjamin Kisang. I work with the Kenya Airports Authority. I'm here to learn more about competency Iceberg model and apply it at our workplace.
Awesome. Then who else? Robert Mutange. Robert Mutange, if you can hear us, kindly unmute yourself and say hi to us. Robert Mutange. Okay, looks like Robert Mutange is not has not managed to speak to us. Good. So I'm excited that I have this opportunity to facilitate this session, especially on the Iceberg model of competency. But I think our starting point should be from the known to unknown. And in every of our conversations, every time, whenever something happens or whenever we are prospecting something or we are looking forward to something, one of the things that we hear people saying that was just a tip of the iceberg. It means for them, so somebody telling you that it's just a tip of the iceberg, it's a clear indication that there is much that is not that has not been exposed. So it's just like you're just trying to, it's like you just want to give a little bit of it or a taste of it, but the huge or the lion's share still remains not exposed. So that could be our, mainly just our, as we look forward to this interaction, we should be able to see, if we are looking at the tip of the iceberg, it means that there's much that is not exposed. There's much that is hidden. But then our expectation is now to go and find out what is this that is hidden that we may not have seen, or something that we may not have seen with our eyes, but they have a very significant effect on the process. They have a significant effect on the outcome or on the general results that we will be looking at. So today, our topic is on the Iceberg competency model. So we'll be looking at understanding this competency model. Just from the way we understand competencies, we should be able to know when you talk about competencies, what is it that is in your mind? What is it that it evokes in our minds with regard to a competency? Then from there, then we should be able now to see how can we anchor the competency framework into the Iceberg competency model? Or how does the Iceberg competency model now speak to us as professionals? In what basis, in what spheres does this Iceberg model speak? And I liked I think one of us was saying that we want to look at how applicable is this Iceberg model now to the day-to-day work, activities, processes, and even structures. So we'll start by just trying to understand what is a competence. And I think I would start by giving an example of just a case example. And I want to take an example of when we want to recruit people. When we are recruiting, we'll always have a person specification and the job requirements and all that. They will indicate that we want somebody with this qualification, we want somebody with this competencies. We indicate if it's analytical skills, we'll talk about communication, we'll talk about adaptability and all that. So ideally, what we are looking at is we want somebody with those visible characteristics. So we'll be looking at what is that is visible, okay? Qualifications is visible, the knowledge is visible. When you tell us you've worked for 5 years, of course, your CV explains that, or your letter of recommendation explains that. Then when you talk about analytical skills, we want to see how have you exhibited that, okay? If it's about interpersonal skills, teamwork, to what extent have you been able to exhibit that kind of characteristic? And also we look at the traits of the person. Your traits. How are you able now to manage pressure? How do you manage work within strict deadlines? At times nowadays, we ask people whether they're able now to understand their team. Are you, for example, if I ask you a question like, if you have two characteristics of people, we have and I just want to borrow it from McClelland, X and Y people on motivation. So you have the X people and the Y people. So in other words, you're having a completely two typologies of people. So we have these people that are lazy, generally lazy, as per the general prescription of that. The way they have been profiled is like they have a lot of lazy characteristic. Then you have these other ones that are very responsible and accountable. But then the question is, between these two, which one will you choose? And I'm sure most of us will choose, will want to choose the ones that are responsible and accountable. Yet, at times even you find that even ourselves, maybe we belong to the X category, whereby we like to be pushed, we have to be threatened for us to work. So what I'm trying to bring out is that we work or we exist in an environment that is so dynamic, and we cannot wish away these changes or these dynamics that we face. Or we cannot just say that I think I don't want to work with somebody with this characteristic. Your role is to see how do you integrate, what is the point of convergence whenever you're dealing with people with diverse characteristics. Remember, human beings cannot be the same. And that explains why even our background are not the same. So looking at the background that we came from, you find that that diversity in background also shapes the manner in which we react to things. It also shapes the manner in which we hold certain values. It also has an impact on the manner in which we basically think about others. So the way I've been brought up will have an effect on how I should be able to react to other people. The way I've been molded, the way I've been cultured will have an impact on how I relate to other people. But doesn't mean that everybody else has been cultured the same way I've been cultured, right? So the variation or the differences in the culturation will also have an effect on how I should be able now to understand the people that I'm dealing with, and generally try to understand how do we build a common ground so that we don't appear like we are trying to dislodge other people from the team. So this concept, and allow me to just share my slide attached. To share this. So just confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, it's visible.
Right, good. So from the title is basically the Iceberg model. From our perspective, then we should be able to see how this model speaks to us as professionals in the HR space, and how does that impact, or what benefits come with this model. And I'll start with this case of David Schneider, who is a highly qualified individual. And David Schneider has the right mix of skills and knowledge that is required to work as a sales executive. But his actual job performance is nowhere near what is expected from a man processing skills and knowledge that David has, right? So he has the right mix of knowledge and skills. The same way you will prescribe and say, I need a person with this qualification 1, 2, 3, 4. But you find that now the actual job performance does not match the expected job behavior of a man of David's caliber. So the question is, what is wrong? And I think these are questions that speaks to all of us, because every time we look at a CV, sometimes you look at the CV, looks perfect. Then when you get the person, even just at the interview level, you ask yourself, you see a lot of mismatch between what is on paper and what is actually appearing on, or what is being exhibited by the person. So the question is now, what is wrong? So what is that makes David an ideal candidate, but stops him from actually performing on his job? Okay. What is it? What is this problem? What is this quagmire? What is this puzzle that makes this person a very qualified person, very experienced, with all those papers, with all the, maybe he's worked for all this period, but if you look at the mixed knowledge, perfect. But when it comes to job performance, completely opposite. That's now the question that begs answers here. So the answer to this lies in the word competency. So you have the skills, you have the knowledge, but then what is lacking in David are the competencies. And if you look at the Iceberg model, you can see, I don't know whether you're able to see this diagram from the one that has the skills and knowledge. Then we have the values, we have the self-image, we have the traits, and we have the motives. If you can see that, then that will be a basis of our discussion. So from this case, then, competency, we can say, is a combination of skills, job attitude, and knowledge, which is reflected in the job behavior that can be observed, measured, and evaluated. Right? So take note of that. Skills, job attitude, and knowledge, which is reflected in the behavior. So you're looking at the behavioral aspects of a person. What we can observe, for example, what we can measure, and what can be evaluated. That's the general description of the concept of competency, right? So we need to see then from the description, how does it now cascade itself now to the aspect of the behavior, to the aspect of the individual, and to the other components. So what is a competency? So from the description here, this could be skills and knowledge, okay, that leads to superior performance, the individual abilities or characteristics that are key to effectiveness in work. Competency, on the other hand, means the condition or state of being competent. And this is a scenario when a person is qualified to perform a requisite standard of the processes of a job. We're just looking at the variations of this definition. Then also competencies are individual abilities or characteristics that are key to effectiveness at work. So we have the word. Yes?
You may need to run the slides.
Oh, they're not running, eh?
They're not running.
Okay, let me just adjust. You're on which slide? The first one.
Yeah, it's on the first one, introduction.
Oh, an introduction, eh? where we are looking at the definition. Okay. I've just tried to retract again, so just confirm that we are on slide 1.
Not yet.
All right, so I think what I can do, just stop sharing and share again. Okay, just confirm now if you can see.
Yeah, the slide is there.
Yes, it's there. Yeah.
Slide 1, isn't it?
Yeah, Mwalimu, just as you're going, could you also be speaking to the fact that even if you could be competent, you can get into a work environment that immobilizes you. So you cannot be knocked out purely on competence. I don't know whether you'll address it as you go along.
Yes, I'll address that. I'll address that because, in fact, you've seen very, very successful people moving from one company to another. Then they go to another company and they just collapse. Then you ask yourself, what is it that this person was doing in a particular organization that was thriving, and now they go to another one and things are not working? That's when now we talk about the culture of that organization, the systems, and at times we say that those systems will kill. They will kill the success of an individual. They actually kill the dream of an individual, right? So, so that's my slide. Is it moving? Are we now on interaction?
Not moving.
No, it's
not moving.
Interaction? No.
Not moving.
No moving. Wow.
Still the first slide.
It's on the first slide. Let me change my network. Just try to shift my network. Okay. I think I've adjusted my network. So even as I do that, I think there's a good element that has been brought out by one of us who was saying that in what scenario, under what circumstance can you not perform yet you may have the competencies? And I would like to say that, you know, even as somebody joins an organization, every time we join an organization, we have all those expectations. And if the expectations that we have end up not being fulfilled, then you find that it limits our ability now to perform to those expectations, because you join an organization with this mentality, with this intention that to achieve. So all those could be some of the factors that could limit our ability to perform. So let me now share that. Is it on or off? Okay. Fine, is that visible?
Yes.
It's visible. Is it moving?
No.
First slide.
It's on the first slide. Okay, so I think.
Mwalimu,
Yes.
you
Can I
could
share
make
with you
it
this slide?
into slideshow?
It's actually, it's on slideshow. Let me try to adjust from slideshow to just normal. Okay. How about that?
Now it's moving.
Now it's moving, yes?
Yeah.
That way?
Yeah.
Yes.
That? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Fine. So I think then let's work with this. So I was giving this example of David, though I was just giving that as an example of why sometimes you, despite the competence that you may have, you end up not performing to the expectation just because of other factors that could be within or without your control. And some of them could be that you find yourself, you go to the organization, you're very much determined that you're going to perform because of the kind of description that was there in the job, and you feel that I am the or I was not
Nendo nena.
Mwalimu, I think we've lost you.
All right. Sorry. We are trying to align the slides because I think some of them are not aligned very well. I hope now you're able to see clearly. So you can hear me? Maybe let's confirm from there.
Yes, but no slide.
Slide is missing.
No, it's okay.
See the slides.
You can see the slides.
Yes, the slides are visible.
Moving.
Yes.
That way.
Yeah, they're moving.
Are you able to see the slide on? Are you able to see the slide number? The slide on David Schneider.
Yes, we are there.
Yes.
Good. Right. So sorry about that. I think I was just giving that illustration that there are so many things that can limit your capability or can limit your ability to perform. And some of them could be beyond your control, or some of them could be attributed to some of the things that we get subjected to at workplace. And that could be one of the reasons why David was not able to perform despite the competencies that they possess. So from the definition, here we talked about the individual abilities or characteristics that are key to effectiveness in work. We've also talked about that competencies are not fixed and therefore can be developed with effort and support. That means that if today you yearn to become a manager or a leader, then there could be certain competencies that you feel that you are limited in, and therefore you work towards enhancing them. As you work towards enhancing them, then it now predisposes you now to that network that you want to build. That's why people talk about, I need now to have a mentor, I need to have a model who can now mentor me, who can lift me into the next level of position. Then can also we can also say that competencies can apply at organizational, individual level, so that you're able to see at the individual level what sort of competencies am I good at, what competencies do I have or possess, and what competencies am I lacking. Okay. Then the word competent is when a person is qualified to perform or to a requisite job, and I think that's what I've already mentioned. That could be what you believe you need to have so that you are able now to perform. Some of the examples of the competencies required by employees are, and this is not an exhaustive list, it's just giving us a typicality of what competencies can be, but we may have other competencies that we will give as examples from where we sit. So one is adaptability. That's a concept where you the ability to be able to exist are you adaptable, or are you that flexible in terms of handling issues? Are you able to change when change demands that you change? Are you able to work from home when there is need to work from home? Are you able to work on a weekend? Are you able to work when called upon, when there is certain things that requires your consent? Motivation is also another competency. motivation to work. And at times, we as HR professionals, we ask people what drives the right fit. And you hear people talking about, I have a passion for this, or I believe that from the experience I've had, I'm also looking forward to better my skills, my knowledge, so that I'm able now to become a better person. Okay, so we just look at what motivates them to do that. Are they looking at career growth? Are they looking at money? Are they looking at increment? Are they looking at expanding? Are they looking at working for a very renowned organization? You know, all those somebody will be looking at. Commitment is also another competency that a person will be looking at. You look at what is your level of commitment. So by level of commitment, it means that you enjoy doing what you do. And commitment goes hand in hand with compassion. That element of the inner satisfaction that you gain by doing something and just supporting them with advice is what makes you to be satisfied. So it could be some level of competency that you thrive in, and you want to perfect it to the extent that every time we talk about commitment, you're among the people that will say, for me, commitment is number one. We have creativity. Creativity in itself as a competency could be emanating from your ability to vary, to do things differently. Your ability now to look at the best ways out of the number of things that needs to be done. You also want to look at what are the best value add solutions that you can provide to a particular scenario. Okay. How creative can you be when you want to recruit, for example? Are we moving away from the classical way of recruitment? Now, how do we embed people into the culture of the organization? So how creative can we be? Then you can look at your independence in terms of mind, in terms of decision making. How independent are you? Or are you this person that whenever decisions are to be taken, you are neither here nor there? We've had cases where people are not able to make decisions. Maybe the chairperson or the chair of the meeting asks Jen and says, Jen, what do you think about, do you think we should stop this incentive? We should stop giving people maybe bread, tea. So Jen will say, yes, I agree. Then all of a sudden, then another person, maybe let's say Lavender raises a hand and says, I think let's look at what impact will this withdrawing of bread, what impact will it have to our staff before making a decision of what? Of recalling it. So as Lavender says that, and the chairman also feels that's a good idea, then Jenny will also say that I also agree with what? I also agree with what Lavender is saying. So at the end of it, you find that are you that person that will be swayed from one decision to another, or are this person that will be very strong in terms of making your independent decision, having taken time to interpret what is happening? And that's the reason why we advise in management and leadership that we should not be just good listeners, but at times it is wise to be the last one to speak. Not just good listeners, but just be the last one to speak. And the element of you being the last one to speak gives you an opportunity to have analyzed what other people have said. And it also gives you the opportunity, maybe there's something that you never thought of, but as you listen to what Robert says or what Janet says, then it triggers your mind and you say, okay, so I think there is something that I was missing out when it comes to making decisions. And there is this, I know there's one of the speakers in leadership called Simon Sinek, and he was giving an example of why the former president of South Africa, that's Nelson Mandela, is regarded as a leader globally. Because we may have other leaders. We talk about John Stalin in Russia, talk about Bill Clinton in US, talk about other presidents elsewhere. But you find that globally, the mention of Nelson Mandela invokes a lot of credibility when it comes to leadership. And he was giving an example that one time when Nelson Mandela was being interviewed, he was asked, why do you Why is it that people regard you as a very thought leader, as a great leader in the world? And you try to explain and say that it's not about him being a leader, but he learned two things from his father. His father used to be a chief during those days when he was growing up. And he said that he learned two things. Whenever his father was meeting the other chiefs within the chiefdom or the kingdom, they used to sit in a round sort of arrangement. And by sitting in a round sort of arrangement, it allows one to directly communicate with the other. It allows one to directly deal with the leader and to interact, because that eye contact usually it evokes some level of accountability, some level of honesty and respect whenever people are communicating. So giving leadership is not just about an individual, is that whenever his father will call a meeting, they could sit in a round sort of scenario, round table, and they will discuss issues regarding the chiefdoms in a very effective way. They will iron out issues without any due regard of maybe somebody not talking directly or not communicating directly. And two, he said that his father used to be the last one to speak. And because he used to be the last one to speak, the element of listening to all these other chiefs will allow him an opportunity to get things that he never imagined, or to listen to statements or submissions that he never imagined could exist. And by the end of the session, he will give a very objective statement, having looked at all the submissions that have been taken by these other chiefs. Therefore, it made now this person, it made him to be a great leader, because having gotten exposed to this kind of scenario, he felt that you, as a good leader, then you should be the last one to do it, to give the opinion. But the moment you call people and say, today our meeting is about 1, 2, 3, 4 thing, 4, 5, 6, and I think this is what we need to do. Already, you've already created a barrier. Somebody who had an opinion that was different will not feel comfortable to say or to comment about it, because you, as a leader, you've already given your opinion. And in that case, then people will just listen. They just wait and listen to you, because already you've come with a pre-informed opinion. And anybody who feels that they are not aligned to that pre-informed opinion will actually take a back seat and just listen to that, and also only wait for those people who believe in the same line of thought now to continue contributing. So then that's a concept that we want to look at in terms of independent. How independent are you in making decisions? How independent are you in submitting to whatever you're discussing with the other people? Then another element is analytical or reasoning. How are you able to make independent reasoning? How are you able to analyze things and just give particular points and also insights? Then we have the foresight. Foresight is a very important competency in terms of, are you able to see ahead? When people are talking about today, are your actions, are your decisions, are your statements talking about today, but in line with what is happening? Are you able to see ahead of others? And that's what we call, as a leader, you need to see what others are not able to see. That's why you have to carry that vision. Your vision is what gives that foresight. Then leadership, are you able to stand out and give people the direction? Emotional stability. This is I think this has become a very common concept that we say everyone, it's actually become a must, that you must have emotional intelligence, because in the workplace today, because of the dynamics in generations, because of the kind of people that we are working with, your emotional intelligence becomes the number one competency. Otherwise, you will not be able to deal with the situations that will be befalling you at workplace. Then Another competence is communication skills. More often than not, we find resistance, or we subject ourselves to resistance at workplace, not because whatever we are trying to drive is wrong, but the manner in which we communicated is what was wrong. How we communicate. How do you communicate that you're going to have a new policy in place? How did you communicate? Did people understand that policy? Did you ensure that people understood why we are doing it, how it will be done, and how is it going to contribute? Of what value will it be to the person and also to the organization? You've seen organizations investing in IT or in technology, but they fail. And whenever you ask them why they failed, you just hear about maybe the system was not in line with what we are doing, or it was abroad, but people did not understand how to integrate them. Whether there was a buy-in from related to that kind of communication skills, because if you're not able to communicate effectively at the right time to the right people, attention, then that you will not succeed in whatever you're doing. So this could just be some of the competence, but I know we have other competence. So this is that we understand that always look into this just to ensure that they can enable us to understand more on the competencies. Now that takes me to when did this concept of competency come into form? So this concept of competency came in the late 1960s. And this
James, you are disappearing. You keep breaking. James, you keep breaking and we are losing you. I don't know whether I'm the only one, but you keep breaking.
Psychology at the Harvard Business School, he felt that we need to understand how these various occupational competencies success in a job. Okay, according to him, that the just element of your knowledge in, let's say, knowledge in payroll, or knowledge in performance management, or knowledge in training and development does not guarantee success, or is not a predictor of success. The same way today we say that your qualification is not a predictor of success. Or today also we talk about maybe your experience is not a predictor of success, because we have other
James, you're breaking.
Intervening and extraneous factors that can either.
James, you're breaking.
I'm breaking, eh?
Yes, yes.
Okay. 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 And how about that? Am I still breaking?
I think you're clear now.
I'm clear. Okay. Fine. So I was giving an example that in line with what McLaren found was that not only our experiences or our academic qualifications or professional qualification can predict success, as we have other factors that can influence positively or negatively on the success. And this he was able now to look at, even in the early 70s, said that organizations that were trying to recruit people and select them are trying to see whether when you recruit someone with this kind of criteria, this skills, knowledge, and qualities, are we able now to have performance or the outstanding performance? And you had this conversation around the A qualifications, B qualifications, C qualifications, and even D qualifications. And there's been a lot of debate around it where people will ask that is it that somebody who scored an A or somebody who scored a distinction is a good performer when it comes to work, or that performance can only be left to the learning aspect, because the transfer of that knowledge sometimes to the workplace by other factors. The person himself, they're not able to integrate, or the kind of environment that they're in does not allow them to exhibit that kind of knowledge and skills that they have acquired. So this growth in terms of understanding the occupational competency movement, as espoused David McClelland, he was just trying to find out whether there's that correlation. And research was being done, a lot of experiments were being done at workplace to see
I can't hear James. I don't know whether I'm the only one.
I also can't hear anything.
Yeah, he can be heard.
It is all right, participants. I'm talking to James. I want him to rectify his settings because he keeps breaking.
Thank you.
Okay. So just confirm if you can hear me now. Try to project. Good. So guys, are you able to hear me again?
Yes.
Yes, can hear you.
Okay. Sorry about that. I think I've just decided to change again. This network is just, it's getting on and off. But I think now we should be able to proceed. Well, so I was on this history. Just confirm that you are able to see this slide on the history.
No.
The slide is at the beginning, Maureen.
On McClelland.
No, it is at the first page.
Wow.
You are there now.
You can't see the slide on history of competency. Anyone who can see that? No. Okay. Just move again. Okay. Let me share the slide one more. Yeah, this technology today is messing us up. Okay, so just confirm that you're on this slide number, history and competency.
Yes.
Okay, you can see the slide on history of competency.
Yes.
Okay. Wow, sorry about that. So according to McClelland, he did a research and conducted it to see between the students who passed and those who did poorly, how did that resonate or how did it project? And he said he found out that students who did poor in universities, as long as they passed, they just did as well in life as the top students. Though through this, McClelland proved that superior performance is not always measured by test scores, but rather related to hidden traits and qualitative behaviors. So qualitative behaviors, these are attributes that are a bit hidden. These are things that you can't really exhibit as yourself, but there are things that are innate. And they're the ones that, according to McClelland, then they predicted the success of these students. And from this, then, there is much that we can borrow, because it means that not only does a person's qualification determine their success, but we have these other attributes that may not be seen, they may not be visible at that particular time, but through exposure, through learning, and through the element of that aspect of interaction, then you find that the person is able to develop and nurture those other areas or those other competencies that are a bit hidden. And that's where now we now look at this, the components of this competency. So according to McClelland again, this competency can be learned. How to do things, what you do, and making an effective presentation, for example, is something that you can do you can learn. How you acquire information in a particular field, for example, using data-based presentation, is also something that you can build. Nowadays, we talk about data analytics, HR analytics, metrics. So by us being able to learn what metrics are key at recruitment, what metrics are key whenever we are looking at performance, then we are able now to attribute that to a particular result. So it's something that also we learn as we do what we actually experience at workplace. How you see yourself, for example, if you are looking at yourself as a very renowned public speaker, then how do you build your competence? You've seen people saying that I want to become a public speaker, and they will look for courses, they look for mentors that can enable them to build their public speaking confidence. You do that even through role play. You do that through just subjecting yourself to an audience and saying that I want to try something, and I want you to get me very strong responses with regard to how I'm going to present and how I'm going to deal with the kind of work that I have ahead of me. So what is that also you consider important as a person? Is it your ambition? Is it your excellence? And generally, how do you want to build it? Okay. Then also we have the psychological part. And these are sometimes we call them physiological factors that drive your behavior. And if you look at Maslow's pyramid of needs, at the lowest level, if you look at the pyramid, we have the lowest level, which is the basic needs or the physiological needs that a person will be looking at: food, shelter. Then you move to security. Then you now move to the next level. Also, we are looking at what? The social. To pay your rent, you're able now to meet the needs of paying bills and all that. But after that, the next question will be, how secure am I with this job? Okay, so from the security part, then you start asking yourself, how do I make myself secure in terms of, am I having a secure job? Do I need to build my capacity so that I'm able now to grow within my career? Am I able to get what the security needs that I need at workplace? Is my job on contract? Is it on full-time? Is it part-time? Is it permanent and pensionable? So what sort of guarantees come with this kind of job? If I feel that I'm inadequate in this, then that's where you find people saying that, okay, I'm working currently at this organization, but there are so many other things that I'm not getting. But I'll be working towards one, gaining my experience so that I'm able now to get a better job. So in that perspective, then somebody is trying to build themselves, looking forward to something. The foresight that you have is what drives you into acquiring a competency in this area, another competency, another knowledge, pursuing another course, so that you are now able now to compound that, so that it enables you now to grow to the next level. Then we can also look at another component in terms of the enduring characteristics. Enduring characteristics that you have. Are you able to be resilient when work is too much? Are you able to be resilient when you are working in a toxic, let's say toxic environment? How well do you deal with, sometimes we say you are dealing with very uncooperative people, or you are dealing with people who are not, they're not even able now to gel with you. But you can't say that I'm not going to work, because you have to say, well, as much as I have people that are not competent, or I have people that are not gelling with me, how do I make myself to be in line with what we are doing? How do I remain focused on what I'm supposed to achieve? And that way, then you are developing these characteristics that we call enduring. Or in other blunt terms, we say, are you able now to develop that thick skin? Are you able to control yourself? Okay. The self-controlled big picture is what becomes very critical whenever now you are looking at these components of the competency. So you have to assess yourself and question, am I able to be resilient? Am I able to withstand work pressure? Am I able to withstand diversity? Am I able to withstand different manner of supervision? Because the way I would want to be supervised may not necessarily be how I'm being supervised. And you've had this when people say that my supervisor does not support me. My supervisor is not willing to support me. My supervisor is sort of a narcissist. Okay. So with all those kind of characteristics, then your question will be, how do I withstand? How do I still remain relevant despite being or having a narcissist leader or a narcissist supervisor? Because one, you still have these needs that you need to meet, and therefore you can't just wake up and say, no, I'm not going to work. But you look at, how am I going to be resilient? How do I remain focused despite all these other factors that may be hindering my ability now to perform? So all those are things that, as you look at that, you look at your self-image, you look at the values that you hold very strongly, your traits, your motives, your skill and knowledge. So in other words, these 6 are the components of this Iceberg model of competencies. So these 6. So we have those ones that we can see clearly, like your knowledge. We can say, yes, you have your qualification. You've said you have this, you have a CHRP, you have a higher diploma, you have a diploma in HR, you have a bachelor's in HR. All that is something that we can see. You can tell us and you can show us the qualification. You have a skill in communication. You're a very good communicator. We see that you communicate very well, and we can only see that that person is a perfect communicator. You have a very good skill in analytical skills. When you are doing your computations, we look at it and marvel and say, well, this is the person that we need. But then these other things that you look at and you say, my values, what values do I hold? Integrity. You look at this professionalism. You look at customer centric, because there are certain things that they must come out of you even as you interact with customers. So with your knowledge, with their skills, but we want to see what values do you hold. So you get a client comes to you and they want to question your integrity, or they will propose something that, according to you, tends to go against your integrity. So that's the point. Then you ask yourself, how competent, or in terms of the core values, am I up to task? Or am I easily swayed when it comes to exhibiting this kind of values? So that brings us to the main types. The main types of these competencies. So I want to look at the basic and the professional. The basic competency and the professional competency in terms of the classifications. So the basic competencies, they exist in all individuals, but only their degree of existence will differ. For example, a problem-solving competency is one that exists in every individual, but varying degrees. So you can be a very good problem solver, but the approach that you take will be very different from the one that James has, or from the one that Jen has. So the variation within which you are able now to execute that competency is what we are referring to as, it's a basic, yes, but now on varying degrees. So maybe you are a problem solver on a scale of 1 to 10, you could be a problem solver at 8. Maybe your score is 8. Another person yes, they also solve problems, but their score is at 4. Others could be, their score is at 5, if you're now to just rate. And you can get that way very well, because I can ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate yourself when it comes to solving problems in your workplace. To what extent have you solved? If we have 10 problems, how often, how fast are you able to solve this kind of problem? So you rate yourself as per the level of efficiency within which you do that. Then we have the professional competencies, which are now related to the job. If you are an IT person, if you are a HR manager, then you look at the competencies that are key to your role. It could be communication skills. It could be analytical skills. It could be skills to do with decision making and all that. So those are now the professional competencies. So they enable one to be able to handle their roles or their jobs effectively. And therefore, and that's the reason why when you're advertising for a position, you'll put that very clearly, that you must have the following skills, knowledge, and competencies. And you put that clearly. So somebody will look at it and say, I don't have very good IT skills. I'm not good in analytical skills, but I don't possess this kind of competencies. So therefore, I feel that in the next job advert, and since I can see that most jobs are requiring somebody who has this competency, then I now try to build capacity in my area, so that I'm able now to acquire that competency. And you've seen that quite often, that whenever you look at a particular role and you find that you are a bit short in terms of that qualification, then you will see people saying that I want to pursue a qualification in this area. I want to develop my skill in this area. It's all boiling down to the professional competency that is shaping now the profession as it is. So that's where now you find that it becomes very critical that people keep on learning and improving on the competencies that they have and acquiring more other competencies that they do not possess, so that it makes them to sit very well in positions that they're looking forward to be in terms of fitting in and also executing their roles professionally. So the competencies then that you need to possess will be, we look at the basic ones and also now the professional ones that will make you an all-round person in becoming a leader or in executing your roles as a professional. Because you'll agree with me that you cannot succeed at workplace if you're only saying that I only want to have one competency. One competency alone, two competencies alone will not be suitable for you, because we are in a very dynamic world. The paradigm shift in working and all that demands that we keep learning. We have to keep on updating our skills. We have to keep on updating our competencies that we view as significant in ensuring that we are able now to grow in our career. So that's on the two types of competence, the basic one and the professional. Now, these professional competencies, they can also borrow heavily from the various competencies that we talked about. From those 6, they actually carry across that, and therefore it depends with the kind of job that you're looking at, and therefore these variations also will be determined by the job, or we're looking at the being job specific ones. Now, these basic competencies encompass intellectual competency, and the intellectual competencies are those that determine the ability of a person intellectually. That's now the IQ, intelligence. Another one is the motivational competency, those which determine the level of motivation in an individual. There are times we ask ourselves, if someone tells you that I'm a very motivated person, how do we establish the level of motivation? Or how do we measure the level of motivation? If Patrick says that they are really passionate about something, how do we determine that? How do we measure that? Then we have the emotional competencies, those which determine an individual's emotional quotient. Now, this is where you talk about the emotional intelligence. You look at the 4 quadrants or the quotients: the self-awareness, social awareness, Then also you look at the control that you are supposed to exhibit in terms of dealing with the various amount of challenges that you face. Then we have the social competency, those that determine the level of social ability in a person. Now, social ability comes in now when we look at the extroverts and the introverts. To what extent can an introvert remain successful in an environment where also the extrovert is successful? So those are the questions that we need to ask ourselves, that can we still have the two working in a particular project and they'll be successful? It's all about how do we interdepend on each other? How do we place a person that is an extrovert in the same department with a person who is an introvert, and you find that at the end of it, you are able now to achieve efficiency and effectiveness. Because now just look at what is this person excelling in. Instead of us now suppressing them, we allow them to exhibit that kind of characteristic. Then at the same time now we see how do we complement with this introvert. For them now they can do a lot of what? Documentation, they can do a lot of reports and all that. Then this other one speaks now about what is being done. So that way then we're able now to align the two, instead of saying that this one cannot work in this department, but we are trying to see a line of interdependence that we should be able to put together now on these basic competencies. Then when we look at the professional competencies, we can look at the generic ones. We have the managerial and the technical. Generic are generally essential for staff or for everybody, regardless of your function. These are like the basic or the core competencies that you need to have as a person for you to just meet the threshold of working. So for example, this could be communication. It could be the language that you use. It may also look at how do you understand the work, okay? So there could not be maybe factors that are not tied to a specific work function or industry, but generally they usually focus on leadership, emotional intelligence, and behaviors that you need to have. Then the second type under this professional is the managerial competencies. And these ones are considered essential for anyone or for any staff who is aspiring to be in a managerial or a supervisory level at work. Some of the managerial competence could be customer-centric. You must be customer-centric for you now to do it. To be able to understand what is that customers expect, and even as you deal with staff or the reportees, are you able now to see that you're exhibiting the customer-centric skills, organizational skills? Are you able to organize your resources? You may have so much resources, but the success of the outcome will depend on how are you able now to utilize these resources, how are you able to organize these resources so that at the end of it, you don't have to claim that you wasted a lot of resources. Then also we look at the cross-functional perspectives, like even planning. Are you able to have a very well-planned process? Are you able to execute that as a manager or as a supervisor? Then execution skills is very, very critical. Many people fail in supervisory roles because they have very good plans, but when it comes to execution, that's where the rubber meets the road. They are not able to execute. Reason being, maybe they want to appear like they're trying to push a particular agenda. We have these people that will just want to be in the mob. For them, it's about being in the mob, just moving with the group. But when it comes to them standing ahead and saying, we must take this direction, then it's like they don't feel confident enough to drive that kind of agenda. So that execution skills, because execution will require that you have very difficult conversations with people, that you have to tell people that this is the kind of objective that we need to achieve. And this objective we must achieve together. Everyone has a responsibility in this. If we want to grow let's say our departmental objectives, then we must all participate. We'll expect everyone to participate. And therefore nobody will be left aside. So you must rally behind everyone. That's the element of of execution. So for leadership, then we are looking at people who can be able to exhibit that kind of characteristic. People who can execute decisions. People who can execute processes. All right. Then analytical skills. Are they able to look at situations and give opinions about what needs to be done? What is the rightful decision to be taken? Then that links now directly to decision making, the delegation bit, and also the leadership. As a leader, for you to succeed, and we've had so many debates around this, some people will say that I need to have very competent people around me. I need to have people who challenge me. Others will say, for me as a manager, I want people that will listen to me, but will not question me. And all that, everyone will try to justify why they want people who questions them. But if you look at the best or the successful leaders all over, you find that leaders who have succeeded are people who are surrounded by very competent people, and also people who question the decisions that are taken by the manager. Because the moment you listen to them, and the way I gave an example of Nelson Mandela, you as a leader or as a supervisor, it makes your work very easy if you have these people who are eager to learn, who are going out there to get new knowledge, new information, and they'll come and bring it to the table. So as you listen to each of their submissions, it gives you a very wide scope of looking at which is the best decision from these conversations that have emanated from this team. Because it allows you now to analyze each of their information that they have shared, and therefore from the analysis, you're now able to come up with a very objective decision. And that makes it very easy for you to lead successfully, because as you listen to them, then your work is not just also to go out and look for information. They'll actually give you the information, so you synthesize the information and look at what are the best options for the department or for your organization at that particular time. Then comes the question of delegation. And this is always a thorn in the flesh. Many of us fear to delegate work because of fear of being outshined. That's the perception. But when you delegate, it's not about being outshined, but it makes even your work easy. It relieves you of some of the work that you'll have to soak yourself into it, which ultimately now affects even your productivity. But once you delegate, just delegate well, give the resources, give guidance, because ultimately you're the one who will be accountable. But if we delegate inadequately, that means that you'll not receive the best results because you didn't delegate, you didn't give the right decision, you didn't provide the right resources, neither did you provide the right framework within which this delegated role needs to be done. So at the end of it, you find that you're suffering because the work hasn't been done as per your expectation, and not because they didn't do it, because it's because you did not give the right guidance, or you delegated work to somebody who does not have the necessary skills to do that kind of work. So it is incumbent upon you as a supervisor or as a manager to have a profile of the staff that you're working with and say, okay, if I look at this kind of role, so and so will be able to do it very well. So let me delegate this work so that it isn't my other role, so that I can focus on some other strategic roles. So that way, at the end of it, you find that you've been able to achieve what we call skill development in the person, but at the same time also, the work has been done within the framework within which you expected, and even now you don't have to suffer from burnout. That's where now the managerial competencies comes in, because as you're leading, then you're making people also to feel that you are supportive. And I can tell you for free that anytime you have people feeling that you are supporting them, they'll make your work very easy. But anytime you have people who feel that you are suppressing them, then your work will be so difficult. And that's why there have been cases where some people delegate their work to someone, and because they have been suppressing them, these people will do the work in a very, they do it wrongly, and then they present it to the supervisor. Now, it even becomes complex if the supervisor does not understand clearly what is expected of their role. And as a manager, now you go and expose yourself by presenting a report that has wrong figures or that is providing a wrong projection. Because ultimately now, if you're presenting that to the board will blame you for giving them inaccurate reports or giving them projections that are not real time, or they're not projecting what's really happening. So that way then you become inadequate because you do not have also the hands-on experience with what people are doing. Then the other one is the functional or the technical competency. Now this functional is more about the specific job within the organization. So you're looking at, for example, business awareness, business acumen, entrepreneurship, technical skills. Those can be categorized under the functional or the technical competencies. So they're also essential in performing any job in the organization within a defined technical or functional area of work. Let's say you are hiring people in IT. They must have those technical skills, maybe in hardware, in programming and all that. So those becomes technical skills within that particular function. And ultimately then, if you are able now to look at these three, then it means that anyone from the professional perspective will be oscillating between, or they must have all these three for them now to be regarded as qualified and competent people. Maybe if there's any question, you can always let me know, or you can, I'll be looking at the charts to just see whether there's any clarification that you need. Then competence can also be divided into two, the threshold and differentiating. Threshold is purely the minimum requirement for you to do something. Sometimes we say that the threshold is 5.2. Threshold is 5. It means anything below 5, you've not met the requirement. So these are just the minimum requirements or competencies that a person should have for them to be effective at work. And that's why when you look at some of the requirements we would say that minimum of a diploma or minimum of a bachelor's. In other words, those are just the threshold. So anything below that, then you fallen short of that role. Then we have these differentiating competencies. These are the things that will distinguish you from the rest. And when we are doing interviews, sometimes we ask people that what makes you different from the rest? What makes you stand out from the rest? Or why do you think you are the best person for this position and not the others? Now, the differentiating competence is what now somebody will bring on board, something that will distinguish them or makes them to stand out from the rest. That becomes a differentiating what? Competency, something that is very specific to the person. As you look at the others, maybe they have the same experience, they have the same skill, they have the same professional qualification, their membership is in good standing and all that. But one thing differentiates this person from the rest. And it could be that this person is able now to do what? Is able now to learn, or is able now to analyze, or is good in analytical skills, or is good in accounting skills, which maybe all these others do not have. So that becomes a competence that differentiates this person from the other. So that's also another way in which we can look at the categories of these competencies. So what is a threshold competency? As I've just mentioned, it's something that is basic. We are looking at something that is minimal, or the minimum requirement. So it's important to understand whether competencies are unique to a particular job or whether they are generic in nature. So as we look at whether they're generic or they're particular to that job, then that element of competency, generic aspect comes in, or the threshold. So according to the research of Mark Bell, 12 characteristics were identified related to managerial effectiveness, whereas 7 were found to be threshold competencies. according to that research, and we'll be looking at those characteristics. Every job at any level in the organization will have a threshold competency. Every job will have a threshold competency. The threshold competency is the bare minimum required to perform the job. The bare minimum. And I know whenever we put our adverts, and I'll still go talk about that, and also when you look at promotions, we'll always put that minimum. You must have served in this position in the same capacity or equivalent, maybe in private or public sector. That's now the threshold. Also, just putting the bare minimum for that particular role. Then it is summarized as a quality that a person needs in order to do a job. So that's whatever the summary will be. It differs from a. See?
Madam?
Yes.
Are you presenting, are you showing the slides?
I'm on that slide. There's one slide that I'm on.
There is no slide showing.
There's no slide.
Yeah, if you look at the charts from 957. It is all right. Just show us the slides. Start where you are. Continue where you are.
So I lost the slide again. Wow, sorry. I don't know what's this, what is happening today with my machine. So are you able to see that slide, the one I'm on?
Yes, we are. You could also maybe keep checking on the charts so that when the such issue is raised.
Whenever I'm able to see. Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. You know, it's okay. So I was just now, this is where I was giving these examples and saying that every job at any level in the organization will have a threshold competency, and it's that bare minimum. It is summarized as a quality that a person needs in order to do a job, and such that it does not offer any aid in distinguishing superior performance from average or poor performance. So whenever you say that, even when internship, when you say that you must have graduated in the last 1 year, that becomes a threshold. So anybody bare minimum, then they don't qualify to be entrenched in that kind of position. So on the next one, what are core competencies? So the core competencies will help one to transcend any business event within the organization, to transcend any single business event within the organization. Therefore, it's important for organizations to identify and develop and manage organizational core competencies that drive large enterprise critical projects. This is so because some projects are so complex and massive that it's impossible for a single individual to execute or to do. So you must look at how are they able to process that, and therefore to lead to a successful project. So at workplace, we look at the individual competencies instead of the organization. Therefore, workplace competencies may vary by job positions, and the unit of measure is people rather than the business. So if you look at the previous slide, we're just looking at the organizational core competencies, where you say this organization is good in IT, innovation, and all that, which is the organizational. But we now need to see, how does your skill as James fit into the core competence of the organization? And therefore, your workplace competencies now have to be speaking to the core competencies of the organization. And that's where now we see, when you are recruiting, that's why in every organization, if you look at trying to hire a particular person in a particular position, some of the workplace competencies may vary specific to that particular organization because of what is regarded as the core competency of the organization. And you find that they'll want people who are joining that organization to be inclined towards that particular competence. So it's, if it's, for example, an engineering company, you find that they'll be looking more on analytical competencies and just being able to understand the various engineering elements within that kind of scope. Okay, then the core versus work competency. The core competency, for example, the organizational, strategic, business unit processes. Then when you look at the workplace, we have the individual competencies. We have, in terms of the purpose, we look at the tactical participants. We are looking at the worker being the person, the tasks are the activities, and the position becomes the competency. Okay, that's how we can distinguish between the core and the workplace competencies as explained in the previous slides. Okay, so in the next, allow me to move to this, who identifies competencies? And this, apart from this list, I want to ask ourselves, do you think you as an individual, you can identify competencies, and how do you do that? As individuals ourselves, are we able to identify competencies? And if yes, how do we do that? Because what we have here is more of, we are looking at identification of competencies to be on the other party. Disregarding that we are the key players of determining our competence so that we are able to see whether our competencies resonate with where we want to work. So the question I'm posing to each one of us is, or to anyone just to respond, is how do you identify competencies yourself, your own competencies? How do you do that? How do I identify competencies? How do you identify competencies? You can even use the chat section. You can use the chat section. How do you identify competencies? How do you identify competencies? Because we should not assume that it's only the HR who identify our supervisor who should identify the competencies, but it's our responsibility. I should do my profiling and say that, okay, I'm good in this, I'm not good in this. So that it doesn't have to be my supervisor to tell me that, James, you don't have this particular competence. Yes, Catherine? Catherine, you can unmute yourself and speak to us. I see your hand is up.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at the people who analyze that job, the job analysts, and even right from the interviewing panel.
Yes.
So there are things that you can notice because these competencies are mainly things outside the norm. Because if you look at people who have ended up being interviewed, they have more or less fulfilled some certain, they've come out fulfilling the job profile, so to speak. So I think after they are there, what now happens is, if the panel is on the lookout for these competencies. For instance, if I look at two, like a job analyst and a psychologist, when it comes to a job that requires people skills, you probably may need a psychologist on the panel, you know, that this thing is a real core. It really has to be part and parcel of who the person that you finally end up with has. For instance, we had one where there was someone who really scored very highly in everything until we just asked the question as to why are you 34 and you are not married? You know, I mean, for an African man, that whatever. So somebody in the panel, I think, was doing some simple arithmetic and decided this guy looks 34 and he's single. So just says, is there any reason why the guy just blew it? You know, the composed guy that was really like the real IT personality that looks very okay and very scientific, just lost it.
He blew it off.
Instead of remembering that he has not gotten the job, he
Yeah.
actually went ahead and just said, what has my marriage got to do with the job? I'm a
With the
performer.
work.
Yes, Sasa now feels they can move now from him. So there was transference from the side of the person being interviewed to the panel. You know, like I have a right to ask the question that now tempers were flaring, and this is the person who has scored the highest. And instead of him being now be given the job aspect, because you see, he's also supposed to be the head of IT. So basically, if you're going to be the head of IT, you must have people skills. When people call, when people talk, their emotions here are there. So he needed to have a people skills. So he just blew it, but he had everything right. So the only thing is, you know, later he was asked to take some water and just take a break, so that now the panelists decide whatever happened here, Shetani alitoka wapi akaingia through the window. So we asked this guy, what do you feel? And because he's come out top, but this issue has just shown he doesn't have emotional intelligence. Yeah. And so, well, for him, he felt also some people in the panel were not emotionally intelligent. But so that's why now, looking at identity of some of these competencies, you probably at the top, when you end with the best three or the best four, your competency, the people at the board need to have some certain competencies themselves, because the psychologist will notice this is a narcissist. You know, because narcissists basically are perfectionists. At the end of the day, they don't make mistakes. They don't listen to these things like that. So you start wondering, how will that augur? You know, someone needs to analyze. Like now the job analyst will say, if this person seems to have tendencies of a narcissist, can we take them to a competent person, an expert, an industry expert on it? Just delay slightly, because it's very key for the organization. So I think that I would contribute to that aspect, other than the HR specialist, the job analyst, and probably in some cases, psychologists. And because of Gen Zs right now, I think psychologists seem to be having a permanent seat on panels these days. That's my submission.
Your submission. Thank you, Catherine. There's a question you didn't answer. What is your role? Are you able, for example, yourself, do you think you can determine the competencies from your own perspective, so that you don't have to ask somebody else to analyze your competencies? Are you able to determine from where you sit?
Yes, I am able to averagely. I have my own internal built psychometric. So I'm able to actually tell if this person can be able to make it, or they'll be frustrated somewhere, because you know the job better. Maybe you know the job environment better, and you know whether this person may have the coping mechanism. I am able to, as a HR specialist.
All right. Thank you. There's a hand from Judy. Judy or Sabrina. Sabrina, you had a hand. Okay.
Hi. I think.
Yes.
Hi.
Yes. How are you? Take it up.
I think my colleague has said more, but on the side of HR, we identify through, we normally conduct gap analysis. Then from the gap analysis, we're able to see different roles where competencies are required. From there, from there we can advertise. From there we can be able to recognize people during promotions and see where they're best suited as per the competencies. Individually, you can also conduct your you can also be able to know what you require. You just keep gauging yourself, look at where you want to go,
and the skills that are required for those roles, and you build yourself towards that level.
Yes. Good. Thank you, Judy. Sabrina.
I've just spoken.
Okay. Thank you, Juliana.
Yes, I can comment that basically what I see as identifying competencies is really from the job descriptions. We're able to identify certain competencies per job category. At the same time, when you look at the core competencies of an entire company, then you can also be able really to see the competencies, and then what do we do? At the same time, you are also able to see gaps within competencies, and you do a competence assessment. Also, when you do a job, the performance management, and especially during appraisals where you have the what and the how of delivering in a particular role. So the how is really speaks to the competencies. And so we find gaps, and especially where we are doing performance management, part of it using the 360-degree feedback, then you're able to identify certain gaps in somebody's competencies, as a result of which then we take certain interventions to start developing these people in those particular areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Who else said a comment? Okay, I know there was a question. There was a question that emanated from the about Catherine. Catherine, I think I can see a comment from Judy and Jen, who I think they're saying that maybe within your panelists we had interviewers who are not emotionally intelligent when they ask such kind of question. Because I think it's, that's a very personal question, especially in this world today. Today we don't have, many people are not even getting married at early age. Sometimes I think the question, marital status can easily be emotive, but it also depends with how you've been asked. Sometimes you can be asked and you say, anyway, that's a very personal question. I beg not to answer, and I think it can just end there. But also now, if somebody responds and becomes so emotive, then it can easily escalate to that kind of scenario where now you look at it as if somebody is trying to attack you. But I think also it's sometimes I know when we have panelists on the interviews, it's always good to prepare them and tell them these are the questions you can ask, these are the questions you cannot ask. Or maybe if you're asking a particular question, anyway, we don't expect an answer, but it just maybe a rhetorical question. Anyway, fair enough. Arthur, you had a question? Okay. Okay. Fine. So I think we can. So we have the experts, we have the HR specialists, job analysts, psychologists, industry engineers, in consultation with line managers and the rest. Now, there's a very interesting question you've mentioned here. I think it was, and I just want to pose it back to you. Gen Z, or Gen Z, or the Zillennials. Nowadays we have the what called Z lens. Must we have a psychologist to deal with them, or it's just ourselves to have a mindset shift so that we are able to put ourselves in their shoes? The same way, when you grow up, when you're working, when you grow up, there are certain privileges that you didn't get, and you felt that when I grow up, I want to have this kind of lifestyle. The same way you had that time, that's the time also, even your parents, only that now the conversation was as open as it is, but also they were feeling that you're becoming stubborn even that time, though now our level of stubbornness could not be exhibited. It's only that now in the current world, people have, or there's a lot of democracy. Even a child will tell you that I'm not taking this, I'm taking that. I will not even do that. Okay? But then, even at work, let's go to a nice place to build. Gasheru, kindly admit yes, okay. Thank you. So I'm just giving a scenario because I know the debate has been all over about how do you deal with these zillennials, the generation Z and also the millennials. But I think it's incumbent upon us to go back and just assess our development and ask ourselves, our development was marked by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the current world, the moment the child is born, already the aspect of technology they're that. In terms of when you talk about the privileges that children are exposed to, it's that particular level. In terms of their rights, and they talk about our rights, they're there. So we must devise a way of how do we handle that. And one of the key things that we want people to have is this emotional intelligence, and also we can attribute that mainly to the upbringing, how we are bringing up these children. Today I was having a conversation with some professionals in another training, and asking ourselves, what is it that has made this generation to be so entitled? They're so entitled. And one of them gave an example that even the children have told her that this issue of the black tax, they should forget about. Now, black tax, in essence, is to whenever it's like every time you just feel like I have to do something for my parent. So now we have a generation of people who are coming up and they see that they have nothing to do with you. Your role was a parent, and you're supposed to have taken them to school, and you've taken them to school. So they don't owe anything to you. Now they're saying that they don't owe you anything in terms of black tax, and that you'll forget about it. If you're doing it for your parent, that's it. But now for us, don't expect anything from us. So it was a conversation that we try to find out, ask ourselves, what could be the reason behind that? And many people gave their own opinions about why maybe the child or this daughter of one of that is trying to deal with their parent, and then they feel like you are just doing too much for the parent. Okay, you're doing too much as for the parent, and therefore them is like the parent has become a burden. It's not, you don't see that as a burden, but you see that as what? Just an aspect of reciprocating and just feeling good and being proud of your parent. So I know it's a dynamic we need to see, but how do you deal with this kind of generation? Catherine says the Gen Zs are now working as teachers. Yes, they're doing that. So I see, how do we handle these people? How do we deal? We'll actually see them as enemies, but yet there are most of them, provided they are molded very well, they're actually very good in decision making, they're very good in creativity and all that. But it also requires a lot of concerted efforts to ensure that we align them to what we want them to do. Good. So then we move to the myths about competencies. The myths about the competencies. And some of these myths, competency is a state of being that provides, that provides a qualification to perform. I hope we are together on the myth slide. Just confirm that we move together on the myth of competencies.
Yes.
Okay. It's also in relation to performance, a necessary but not sufficient condition. Another myth is that competencies cannot guarantee that workers will perform adequately. And I think that's already a concept that we've discussed around it. And we're saying that it may not necessarily generate or guarantee that kind of success. However, workers cannot perform to standards without competencies. That's also another myth. Extremely competent workers may fail on the job due to a variety of personal or environmental factors, and I think we've talked about that. Quite often you've seen CEOs that have excelled in one company. Immediately they move to another company, the expectations that we had maybe does not generate into that. But here there was stellar performance. They move to this other company, they don't achieve what the way they achieved in the other company. Then we ask ourselves, is it the same CEO moved from company A to company B, and now they're not performing, but in the other company they were performing? Was it an element of the system? Was it an element of the culture that was there? Or is it an element of the people that were there vis-a-vis the people that are in this other organization? So all those questions are the ones that people start interrogating and asking themselves, where is the missing link in terms of why this person was performing here, but they come here, they're not performing. Another myth is that where some others lack competencies can make up a lot of shortcomings with exceptionally hard work. And you've seen that sometimes you find somebody who is not qualified or who doesn't have maybe the degree. You want somebody with a bachelor's degree, but they don't have. Sometimes if you give that opportunity to somebody with a diploma, already they come in feeling that it's because of that degree that made them not to have qualified. So they'll come in to actually prove a point that qualification alone does not guarantee good performance or better performance. So they'll come in just also to prove a point that it's no longer that qualification only, but other factors that could be innate to the person. Competency is also necessary, but it cannot guarantee results. Hence, it's important for organizations that they should not confuse competency measurement with performance measurement. And competencies are about being qualified to do the work, whereas performance is the result. So you look at the ideal versus the real. Ideal, this is the ideal candidate. 10 years experience. This CHRP qualification, higher national diploma, master's, bachelor's. Now we put you in the job of performing as the head of HR, and you find that you are not, your competencies in this as profiled do not speak to the actual performance. But you find even somebody who does not have all the competencies that you had is able now to perform and outsmart you in the workplace. So characteristics of competencies, there are 5 characteristics. 1, the ability to perform a certain physical or mental task. That's the skill, knowledge, information a person has in a specific content areas. Knowledge, maybe you have the diploma, high diploma, bachelor's. Then you also have the self-concept, which is the person's attitudes, values, or self-image. Then another characteristic is physical characteristics and consistent responses to situations. Those are the traits. Then we have the motives. These are the things about which a person consistently thinks about or wants that which causes action. What is the motive? What is the drive? What drives you every day you wake up? Is it the urge to succeed? Is it the urge to impact on other people? Or is it the urge to just be successful and just make a very comfortable kind of lifestyle? So the motives have to drive, they have to direct, and they have to put you to focus on a particular action so that you achieve something out of that. That's now under the characteristics of these competencies. So now into the gist of it all, the Iceberg model. The Iceberg model. Looking at this diagram, and I believe we're also on the same page, are you able to see the diagram that has the knowledge and skills? Then we have the attitudes, traits, and the rest. Just confirm that you can see that slide.
Yes.
Good. Good. So if you look at this model, now the iceberg, as you can see, it has almost 90% under the water. Then we have 10% above the water. Those are the visible characteristics. Okay, those are the explicit characteristics that a person can be able to actually show or to portray. But we have these other ones that are hidden, that are below the level that we can see. But you can see there are so many, and they play a very imperative role towards the success in the job or the success in anything that somebody is doing. So this iceberg model takes help of the iceberg to explain the content or the concept of competency. So 1/9 of the volume above water and the rest remains beneath the surface in the water. So a competency also has some components which are visible like knowledge and skills, but other behavioral like attitude, traits, thinking style, self-image, organization of fit are hidden or beneath the surface. They're hidden or beneath the surface. And that's the reason why I've seen people trying to, I think because of the discussions around hiring for attitude, I've seen people trying even to test attitude in an interview, which ends up backfiring because everyone also knows that when I'm going to the interview, I need to put in the best attitude ever. So if you try to establish my attitude at interview level, well, we have some people that will become erratic and lose it. But everybody else is now looking at that and saying that, you know, when you go to the interview, just know that it may not necessarily be your competence, but also they may ask you questions around attitude. So how do you do that? Okay. So those are things that are a bit hidden, and therefore they will require some time for them to come out. It may not be an immediate. You cannot just talk to somebody and you see that attitude. The way people say that this person has an attitude. I've talked to her or I've talked to them and I realize that they have some attitude. And normally that attitude concept tends to be very, very, very negative. So according to the competency studies by Spencer LM and Spencer SM, they came up with the structure of competency as 5 types of characteristics under the iceberg model. So according to Spencer, these characteristics, they are an individual underlying characteristics and is fairly deep and enduring part of a person's personality and can predict behavior in a wide variety of situations and the job tasks. Today, when you ask people, what do you think is the best leadership style or the best leadership model? You'll get so many responses. Somebody will talk about authentic leadership, servant leadership, democratic leadership, even someone will talk about authoritarian leadership. But ultimately, we are looking at somebody or a leader who is very adaptable, a leader who is able to withstand the storms, a leader who is able to withstand the rains, a leader who is able to withstand all kind of people that they interact with. And that's the kind of person that you're saying is able now to be adaptable to the different situations at workplace. I'll give you an example of in Honduras. Honduras as a country, they were faced with so many flooding and the monsoon winds that were affecting its activities. So the government decided that they wanted to hire a very qualified engineering company from Japan to come and build what we call long-lasting bridge. And that bridge, they called it, the river was called River Choluteca, and they came up with a bridge, and they said that we want to build a bridge that will withstand all these storms, so that we come along and solve this problem of the perennial monsoon winds and the flooding that is affecting Honduras. So the government decided to invest heavily and got the best engineers and the best constructors from Japan. That was in 1970s. So they had that, and they came and built a bridge. That bridge was magnificent. In fact, if you Google, you actually see that as one of the marble bridges that were constructed by the Japanese government and also the providers. So they came up, they built a very strong bridge, a bridge that was looked at as a solution now to the problems of the river Choluteca at that time. But unfortunately, after 5 years, that bridge was rendered useless. Reason being, the kind of course that River Choluteca was taking, instead of it now passing through the bridge, under the bridge, it changed its course and started now passing outside the bridge. And it therefore also affected the road on the other side. So it actually went ahead and destroyed the road and now took a different course, which means that now the bridge remained isolated because now there was no water passing under the bridge. But the river has taken a different route. So the government looked at itself and asked, and they were asking themselves and said, how come we've invested heavily in this bridge? And just after a few years, we find that the river has changed its course. What is the solution? So how do we come up with a solution now to this kind of changes? Because now the dynamics are becoming too much. We never anticipated that this river will change its course. So now it has changed the course and the bridge now remains isolated and it's not serving the purpose that it was intended with all the resources, with all the investment that was done by the government of Honduras. So from that, they learned something. And I think from the discussion now with the engineers, they say that we will not now build a foundation, or not build a bridge that is lasting the way we've talked about it, but we'll be looking at a bridge that is adaptable. And they contacted another engineer and said that we will not want now to have a bridge that is just stagnant, but we need a bridge that can be moving. And they came up with what we call an adaptable bridge that can be, every time there is a change in course of the river, they can just move it also, and so that it continues to serve the people. And that is the same element that I'm bringing together in terms of these competencies, that we need to look at how adaptable are we? How do we become adaptable to the different situations? The same way we want leaders that are situational, a leader that is able now to deal with situations as they come. A different situation will call for a different call to action. So the calls to action that we take must always be situational, so that we are not rigid, we are not perceived as very rigid people when it comes to making certain kind of decisions. And that's where now this, the Iceberg model also unfolds. So according to these studies, they try to analyze how the competencies are related to superior performance. And they say that competencies are casually related to effective and superior performance in a job or a situation, and that actually predicts who does something well or poorly as measured on a specific criteria or standard. That's what they found out. So these are the key components of the Iceberg model. We have the traits, we have the self-image, we have the skill, then we have the knowledge. So the traits are habitual. These are enduring characteristics. For example, flexibility, self-control, a good listener. Are you able to build trust? Do you engage? Do you inspire? Are you that person that has an objective mindset? Or are you that person that is inflexible? That means you are rigid, you don't have self-control, you are not a good listener. That means you speak so much. Or you're that person that speaks to the people and not listens to them. Are you that person that has eroded the trust? Are you that person that disengages with people? Okay. Are you that person that discourages? Instead of inspiring, you find that you discourage people from what they ought to partake. So in terms of the self-image, then we look at how people see or view themselves. Do you have a positive self-image? Do you regard yourself as a worthy person? Okay, your sense of identity. Quite often, you've seen people suffering from the imposter syndrome. Reason being, they regard themselves as not qualified, or they're not competent enough to be in those positions. And the moment you start suffering from the imposter syndrome, then that's a worrying trend that you need to arrest, because if you feel that you are inadequate, that's the time that now you find that you are not able to execute decisions, you are not able to assert your authority, you are not able to make things happen. Because at any given time, you are doubting your conscience. And these are people who always want to ask, hey, I have this thing that I need to do. What do I do? Can you help me make a decision on this? There's this stuff that has not been coming to work. What do I do? And this person has a policy. They know the policy. If people have not been reporting to work, which procedure you need to do. But because they don't believe in themselves, they will always want to ask, how do I do? How do I write the letter? Yet, then you ask yourself, so is this person feeling that they are inadequate? Is it that they don't just want to do their work, or what could be causing them to feel inadequate? Okay. So you need to perceive yourself. You need to have that belief in yourself as a leader, as an expert. It's somebody who can provide advice that is very objective, and advice that is very authentic. You should be that person who is innovative. You should be a leader. You should be an agent that is able now to provide the right decisions or the right solutions to a particular scenario. Then we have the skill. The skill is basically now that ability, we've already discussed about it. Ability to be trained, ability to learn, ability to acquire skills, generally can be classified under the skill. Then we have the content, knowledge, or information in the field of work. So we look at the education. If you're the HR, we need to see from your educational background, what is this qualification that you have? How have you developed your capacity? What sort of continuous professional development have you undertaken? So all that is what informs the knowledge of the subject area, or the knowledge of the work or the field of work that you ought to engage in. So it all ranges from education to the experience that you should be having. Now, why do we need to study this Iceberg model? It is very significant because it enables us to understand that there's a relationship between those competencies above, knowledge and skill, and those ones that are beneath the surface. These are relationships. Because the aspect of those competencies that lie below the surface, like attitude, the traits, the thinking, the line of thought, the thinking style, directly influence your use of the skill and your knowledge. So the knowledge and skills cannot operate in isolation. Rather, it is embedded into these other hidden sort of characteristics that we are referring to them as those characteristics that are, for example, the attitude, the traits, your line of thought, how fast you think, directly influence that application of the knowledge and skills. And that's the reason why sometimes you'll hear people saying that this person is so qualified, but they're very slow in making decisions. Meaning that line of thought is very slow. They can't think. We normally say that we want you to think. Thinking, you have to think very fast. But if you have that person who thinks very slowly, it means that it will affect their execution of the knowledge and the skills that they possess. Okay. So that is in line with that. So let's try to understand through examples. And one of them is now, consider that a highly qualified person with the perfect combination of skills and knowledge is chosen for an esteemed project. However, if the person is not happy to work with his new team members, he may not be able to perform to the best of his abilities. Okay? He has the best qualities, the combination of the skills and knowledge. He needs to work in a particular project. But the person is not happy to work with the two team members. He may not be able to perform to the best of his abilities because he's not willing. He's not happy to work with the team members. And quite often, you have seen even people saying that I don't want to be in that team. Even it happens even in team building. So already you've gone for a team building, but when you say that you want people to group themselves, they'll group themselves because of the friendship, because of how they like each other. Rarely will you find somebody grouping with someone that they're not used to. Already that's already a projection that we are already accustomed to this component of comfort. We want to associate with people that we're comfortable with, that we talk to, but we don't want to disengage that. We don't want to blend with somebody that we were not used to, okay? And that's what becomes a limit, because at times I may not have blended with you, but this moment, maybe it gives an opportunity to learn the other side of you, which maybe is also complementary to what I have. So in terms of this importance, again, it's important to understand that the two levels of competencies will take different routes. The ones that are visible can easily be developed through training and skill building exercises. However, those ones that are behavioral are rather difficult to assess and develop. Like, how do you test, how do you build somebody's attitude? How do you develop their attitude? You find that it takes a lot of understanding of the person, and also accepting that I don't have the right attitude. Because quite often people will object to that. You tell them that you have a bad attitude about work, they'll tell you, no. How do you determine that? I don't think I have a negative attitude, because they will tell that you're becoming personal, or you're just becoming, what do you call it? Sometimes discriminatory, when you're telling somebody that they have a negative attitude. So it becomes so debatable, because it is something that is very subjective. It's saying that you have a poor attitude, or you have an attitude that is not applicable at workplace. So it takes more time and effort, intensive exercises like psychotherapy, counseling, coaching and mentoring, and developmental experiences to help in trying to align the two elements, or the two characteristics. I was having a conversation with one of the HR professionals, I think it was on Wednesday, and they shared a very pertinent experience with their CEO. And they said that their CEO is this person that will always want you, they want you to appear like you are not of value to the organization. They will always suppress whatever actions that, or decisions that you want to recommend. They'll always throw them below the bus, and they'll say that one is not possible, this one is not workable, this is not how we work it, and all that. So they were saying that they feel frustrated because their CEO, who should actually be helping them to be good decision makers, looks as if they don't want to hear any of the ideas, because the ideas that they're bringing on board may look like they are very great ideas, but since they're not originating from the CEO feels that they should not be adopted. And she was explaining that in that kind of situation, so how do you deal with this CEO who is always looking forward to make you feel like you have nothing to offer, nothing of value to offer? And that's the kind of conversation that the CEO propagates, that some of us here are not adding value at all. Not because they're not adding value, but because whenever they come up with bright ideas or strong ideas, the CEO also feels that they will not allow that kind of idea to originate from staff, rather it should originate from them. So it was a conversation that we picked, and we said that now that's a scenario that you as a person, you need to see, how can I thrive in this? Because if the CEO is not comfortable or is not happy about my decisions, then will I just sit back now and give my comments, or I continue giving my comments whether they're adopted or not? Okay. So we had a conversation around it, and I just advised her that it may not be that that's the only organization that will work for, but I think always just speaking out is important. Just speak it out, whether it's adopted or not. But one time somebody will say that this idea was actually mooted by so and so, and even if it's not adopted today, but years to come, it may be adopted, and it could be because of you raising it. And you never know, even sometimes these people who claim that they know it all, they will borrow your idea and reintroduce it as if it's theirs in a different way. But you find that, of course, it will have originated from you. So those are some of the intricacies that people are facing at different workplaces. Now, the benefits, again, According to Iceberg model, we are able to identify and prioritize skills, knowledge, and personal attributes required for the job. We can also use the past and present behavior to predict the future behavior. We can also ensure consistency and fairness of selection process. And this is where we talked about how can we apply this model practically. And it gives you a very strong basis within which when you are recruiting people, you should be able to have this understanding that there could be some attributes that you may not get them at the interview level. But these are attributes that throughout, and that's where we have this period of probation. During probation, that's when now you start trying to understand this person, or this person will exhibit some of the characteristics that they could not exhibit during the interview. So it gives you that time now to see whether this is a person that is fitting in the organization or will not fit. Because now you have time to assess their level of tolerance, their level of endurance, their level of communication in line with other team members. How do they blend with the team members? What is the attitude towards work? Whenever they are called upon to do work, how do they respond? Whenever they are called or they're asked for support, how do they respond? So all that will be coupled towards through this period of the probation. So it ensures consistency and fairness in the selection process, because one, you'll have the outlined competencies, the key ones, then now you have the attributes, but then you should be able to see how do they map up with the position. It also minimizes hiring risks, because you will get it right in terms of the competencies, you get the right person. The only question that you'll be asking yourself now is the kind of fitting in the culture, because culture is sometimes the main hindrance to success of people, the culture of the organization. Because you'll get a very successful person, or you even poach, you headhunt, let's use the right term, you headhunt a person and they come in this organization, but the culture that is so toxic limits their performance. So that could be a risk that can be attributed to that. But all in all, once you've outlined your competencies, then you are likely to get the person that you expect. It's only now that these other elements, things that are hidden, are the ones that now you'll be trying to see how do they speak to the culture of the organization. Then you're also able to communicate clearly expected behaviors to job holders for becoming superior performance. You're able to communicate that because you'll have talked about the threshold. What are the basic competencies? What are these managerial competencies? What are the technical competencies? So that they are clear in the minds of the people, and how that will help them to work and fit in that kind of position. At the same time, the other benefit to the organization would be that it sets the organization to have the core capabilities. Remember, success of the organization is not the infrastructure, but it is the people. It's the human resource, because it's the human resource that will drive the innovations. It's the human resource that will drive the technology. And ultimately, when you talk about a very techno-savvy organization, we are looking at a techno-savvy organization with the human mind behind it. And therefore, it creates that organizational capability that distinguishes it from the others. It will also help to align aggregate behaviors to the vision, the strategies, the priorities, and the goals. The behaviors, the vision, strategies, priorities, and goals. And this goes back to what the organization believes in. What is the vision of the organization? Because whenever the vision is outlined, then we look at bringing on board people that will speak into that vision. Rarely will you bring in people that will not speak to the vision, because that will be tantamount to failure when it comes to trying to rally people behind the vision of the organization. So all that is what will determine through this Iceberg model. Then we are able to see what are these things that are key, and what are these things that are subordinate, and what are these things that speak into the main vision of the organization. At the same time, with the Iceberg model, then we are able to promote positive behavioral change. Positive behavioral change. And how is that realized? It is realized because already by setting our standards and saying that you must have this competency, you must have this skill, and this is how we would want ourselves to be regarded. This is the brand of the organization. Then we also try to shape the behaviors of these other people who are joining into the mainstream behavioral aspect that we hold very strongly as an organization. For example, if you're looking at professionalism and customer-centric, then you'll want to rally people behind into that kind of mantra so that they speak the mantra of customer-centric. They conduct themselves with the highest level of professionalism. They have to be people of integrity, people who can be trusted and all that. So that's what the kind of communication that will be embedded in the people, and say that here in this organization, we believe in what? Integrity. We hold all our decisions, the way we interact with clients, the way we communicate to clients, it must be with the utmost integrity. The way we carry out ourselves, the way we just send out communication must have that feel of our culture. So the way in which we do things is what now will be an impact, will actually imply on the core competencies of the organization. And that's what brings in what we call the competency mapping, which is the process of identifying competencies that are required to perform successfully in a given job or role or a set of tasks at a given point of time. And it generally examines two areas: emotional intelligence or emotional quotient, and strength of the individual in areas like team structure, leadership, and decision making. So when we talk about mapping, we're just looking at what the competencies of this job, the competencies expected for you to perform better in the person, so that we map and say, yes, you have skill number one, the competency, knowledge, and all that, the traits and all that. Are they speaking to these traits of the job? And that's what we call the competency mapping. So you look at what is expected and what you're looking for. Then you try to map them on a case-to-case basis. So this process of competency mapping consists of breaking given role or job into its constituent tasks or activities and identifying the competencies required. So when you look at the technical, what technical skills or competencies are you looking at from the person? Managerial, behavioral, conceptual, attitudes, the skills, etc. So once you break them down, then you look at the person that you're looking at. Does this person possess these technical skills at the minimum? Does this person possess these managerial skills at the minimum? Does this person possess these behavioral skills at the minimum? So having done that, then that's when now you put your advert and say, we are hiring for this position, the HR business partner. These are the qualifications, these are the expectations, and these are the key competencies, so that everybody who wants to apply for that position will go through that profile and ask themselves, I don't think I have the right knowledge here, or I don't think I have the right behavioral competencies, but how am I going to change that so that I'm suitable for this position? So that's what we call competency mapping. So it's done mainly at what we call the recruitment and selection, and also during promotions, because you have to also align what promotional behaviors are you looking at. Then somebody who wants to apply for that level of promotion, then they should be able to see that their qualities or their characteristics are in line with the competencies that have been outlined in the new role that is being advertised. Now, the steps of developing a competency model: we need to gather data and preparation of a particular job. Then from there, we carry out what we call comparative analysis. So in the same sector, you look at what others are having in terms of job requirements. And this also happens when you hear people saying that for you to be a HR director, what sort of competencies must you have that are different from a HR officer, or that are different from a HR assistant, and are different from an intern? Because quite often you find people advertising for a position of an intern, a HR intern, Then when you look at the job descriptions are similar to that of a HR assistant or a HR officer. Then you ask yourself, whoever came up with this competency framework, were they really analyzing and understanding what is entailed in this role? Because you must distinguish. There's no way you expect an intern who has worked for 3 years or 2 years, and then you want them to come in as an intern, and the way you put the qualifications and the experience and all that, it speaks to the specifics of a HR officer. So it calls for a lot of analysis so that you're able to know, does this, so that when you get these 2 people or 3 people, you can easily distinguish them based on the competencies. But if we just pick generic requirements and we post them, we end up getting people that will come and say, then we ask ourselves that this one we cannot afford them. This one they don't meet our standards. These ones will not fit in here because they're a bit higher in qualifications. And it all boils down to how did you describe the competency levels that you are looking for? Because the moment you get it wrong at the competence level, then you get the wrong people, and you end up not even hiring anyone, because the way you described and what your mind or what your organization feels is not, because now you get a mismatch between what you advertised for and what you got. Then it affects the results that you are looking at. Then the validation becomes the last step. Good. So that brings us to the competence directions or dictionary. That in terms of coming up with the competencies, then you need to understand the behavioral skill characteristics. You also need to use reference for other competency dictionaries, benchmark with other typical industries, because you cannot operate in isolation. Look at the intensity of the action of work. Look at the size of the impact. You look at the amount of work so that you're able to outline the difference between one level and another. Look at things that can be developed. Look at the competencies that can be exposed, the ones that people have mastered, the ones that are proficient, and the ones that somebody is an expert in. For example, today when you ask, you need an expert in legal or industrial relations. First of all, you have the characteristics that this person must have a qualification in what? In law, they must have dealt with collective bargaining, unions, and all that. So that competency becomes what describes an expert in a particular scenario. Now, how do we do competency-based interviewing? So the hiring process has also undergone a change. Therefore, a lot of emphasis is being put on the hidden behavior aspects, as well as to make sound decisions. So these behavioral aspects can be developed through proper guidance and good management. Most of the organizations look at just the visible components of the competencies, that's the knowledge and the skills. But we're saying that we need to have a complete picture. So a complete picture can only be realized if you're able also to assess the hidden aspects of the person. Otherwise, we'll get it wrong. So that's where this competency-based behavioral interviewing comes into picture. And the question is, competency-based behavioral interviewing are so structured so as to gather maximum information about the competence of the candidate and to make the right decision. For example, the lead question for the first competency is asked and then proceed to obtain overview of the event. The event's overview is the roadmap to structure how the candidate will provide the information. The event's overview provides high-level overview, for example, the situation, and you ask the person, tell us a situation where you handled an employee on a disciplinary case. What actions did they take? What were the results of the candidate's involvement? So those scenarios can actually bring out other elements that are hidden that may not necessarily appear in the CV or in the interview setting of as prescribed. So a few standard or generic questions are designed to obtain the overview of the most effective manner. So it's important that we look at making our competency-based interviewing holistic, so that we also try to ask scenario questions or situation questions, so that we're able to get the other side of this person. So that if somebody tells you that they're able to make decisions, because that will appear on paper, good in decision making and all that, blah blah, analytic and all that. but are we able to subject them to a scenario where we are able to see how did they exhibit that? How did they make that kind of decision? And you've seen even when companies use assessment centers for recruitment, they use them just to gauge the element of leadership. So you're put in that room and you just give a task without to anyone, but they want to see who is the first person that will take up the responsibility of guiding others and saying, look, we have this task that has been put ahead of us. How do we go about it? And somebody else will be watching to see who has stood up as a leader to say, yes, we have a task here. Can we work on it? And the rest will be sitting, waiting to be instructed. That's when now you determine and say, okay, I think in this room, we only have one leader, or we only have two leaders, based on how they were able now to rise up to the occasion as per the action or as per the activity that was ahead of them. So we need to ask ourselves some of the competency-based interviewing questions. And some of them, these questions are applicable to all competence. For example, state a caption or heading that describes the candidate's role in the event. Describe in 2 sentences what is the event about, who else was involved, and what was your role, what was your function at the time with respect to the position of the title. Why is this event a good example of a time you claim to have succeeded or you claim to have dealt with a difficult scenario? What were the major milestones? What was the outcome? Now, whenever they see this, now the question will be, how do you prove that actually that's what we did? Because with the chat GPT today, you can always put that and they'll give you the scenarios that you can elaborate. But then it boils down to how objective will we be able to get this analysis. So the benefits of competency-based interview, it's a systematic and non-discriminatory technique that helps interviewers get the right information from applicants and make right hiring decisions. It also takes into consideration past behaviors of relevant role to best predict future behavior on a similar or a higher role. And it also prevents biased and subjective hiring process. It also prevents biased and subjective hiring process. And lastly, it limits the possibility of candidates faking it with vague generalization. Though some people say that you fake it until you get it. But at times, you know, sometimes you fake it until you get exposed. So it also gives that kind of scenario. Good. So I think as we come to the end of this presentation, there's this brief case study. Just want us to go through it. Then I leave it to you to think around it. So Richard Hadley has just joined as a HR head in a multinational corporation. He finds that despite his new company having a talented and qualified workforce, the organization is not completing its projects efficiently and successfully. Questions. What do you think could be the reasons for this? Question 1. Question 2. What should Richard do to change the competence levels of the existing workforce? And question 3. What should Richard do to make sure that the new hires are competent enough to do their job? Again, Richard Hadley has joined as the head of HR in an MNC. He finds that despite his new company having talented and qualified workforce, the organization is not completing projects efficiently and successfully. So I just want us to give our opinion about this scenario. Assuming you are the Richard Hadley here, you join a multinational corporation as head of HR, but you find that these people are so qualified. You look at their profile, they're talented, but they're not completing the projects efficiently and successfully. So what do you think could be the reasons as we wind up? What could be the reasons? What are the reasons? Anyone to share with us?
Malima,
what could be the reasons? Yes, Robert.
I would cite, because looking at what you're told there is that the talent is there, but it may not be efficiently being put into use, probably because of lack of motivation the workforce may not be motivated to achieve their goals. And also there could be an attitude problem whereby the attitude of the workforce is not synchronizing with the organizational goals. So people are really not motivated. They don't have the right attitude to be able to achieve the goals that are set.
Good. Thank you, Robert. Yes, it could be the attitude issue. Then these people could not be motivated because you have them there, but they are not achieving it. That means there could be these other factors that could be attributed to that. So thank you, Robert. Anybody else? Yes, Catherine.
One of the major things that this kind of case studies have is organizational culture. Yeah, because even Richard himself can end up being a victim because you need to study the culture of that organization, because the culture could be defeating the talent. Issues to do with the inside dark forces of politics. Yeah. So even if you are the best light in the game with the best CV, you come there and you get swallowed in the darkness of that organization, which is not documented. Yeah, you can go to an organization where the messenger is actually the pseudo CEO, and you didn't know that, those kind of things. And so you get yourself caught up in a trap of the organizational culture. So I think organizational culture is a very big thing to study even before taking up a job. Wow.
Very true, very true, very true. I can see a comment from Lucy says, the management style, the culture and the management style that suppresses talents, lack of motivation. So generally, we look at the culture, then we have Judy. Yes, Judy.
Okay, so what I would do first is just to carry out a work environment audit to get to understand what could be the issues around work environment, culture audit, what could be the issues around culture. And then I would also carry out a skills audit and what we call competency mapping, just to understand whether they have the right competencies. Then now, after I have the data, I would go ahead and come up with interventions around work environment, because when people are disengaged, motivated, when there's an issue of culture, when they have the qualifications and they are not achieving or executing, then it could be work environment, could be culture, it could be skills and competencies. So once I have the data, especially for competency, I would look at what are the core competencies and what is lacking in them. Is it delegation? Is it execution competencies? Are they not able to make decisions? And then after I have now the information, I'll come up with interventions. It could be L&D, it could be role reassignments, it could be coaching and mentorship. Yeah, so that is the approach that I would use.
Good. Thank you. You do an analysis so that you establish what could be the reason behind this incompetency, the reason behind projects not being done efficiently and also successfully. So that means people are doing things but they're not completing them. Or they're also working, but they're not efficient. They're spending like a whole day to submit a report that will have just taken 1 hour. So you need to go and establish the core of the reason behind that inefficiency. Thank you. Anyone else on question 3? I think there are 3 questions. You can respond to what should Richard do to change the competence levels of the existing workforce. And I think that's also, it blends with what Judy has mentioned. What should Richard do to make sure that the new hires are competent enough to do their jobs? Anyone to respond to either of the questions?
Maybe I can try. I think this is the perfect case for developing the competency model. Here, as an answer to question number 3, so that very quickly, even as what Judy has said is done, that he now protects or stops. There must be a time to stop the new hires, if he can afford to do that, to come up with develop the competency model, so that the new hires don't get caught up or get infected and affected by that culture that is eating into the performance, so that any new hire coming in is able now to perform based on the way he wants things done. And it's a case, I think, for Iceberg model, this one, to do the 90%.
Okay. So that is Jen. Anybody else with another comment? Hello. All right. Yes, Juliana?
So just picking up from where Catherine left, after developing the competence framework, then is to ensure that any new hire being hired for the organization, then we use the competence-based interviewing model, using the STAR model, and also equipping the interviewing panel with the necessary skills to interview well using that particular model.
That's true. That's true. In fact, nowadays I advise HR professionals, you don't spend 2 hours interviewing a person for them to just tell you that they did this qualification, they did a high diploma, from there they did this and that. Just have scenarios that can enable you to actually have this person speak in your organization. You just pick a case of organization that you've had recently and ask them, how would you deal with this kind of situation? So it will actually draw them into a mind of thinking and how to handle a particular situation. And that's why this Iceberg model is very key. And I think from here, then we need to see that we are able now to come up with a very clear competency, Iceberg model of competencies with because we do that way, then we will not get different results. We'll actually get the same results and we'll keep complaining about why is it that we have people that are very competent and they fit into the culture of the organization. So I will advise that we go back and work on every time, even if we are advertising, just make sure that you realign the job just to see that the competencies that you are looking for in this person are the ones that are being spoken in that. Otherwise, we'll end up having talking about the same problems, yet we're not coming up with strategies that will help us to overcome these problems. And as strategies for breakfast, otherwise we will not succeed. We'll keep on complaining and saying, oh, this culture is bad, this organization is bad. We have strategies, but we're not implementing, people are not cooperative. It's all boils down to how we have been culturated and how the organization is looking forward to the success or to the problems that are ahead of it. Good. So thank you very much. Unless if there is any other question, I don't know whether Dan is here. If there's no other question, I can then, if you can hear us, maybe you can just tell us what's ahead of us as we end, as we conclude the session.
Hi, James.
Yes, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. That was very good presentation. And yeah, other than, although I realized we had challenges regarding your network, as well as there was a time you were in a very dark, you are in a very dark space. So during that time, we could not see you, but you were able to work out on that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this presentation or the notes in these presentations have much more information. I realized there was a certain stretch that you were not able to view. So for that purpose, I want to assure you that the presentation has already been uploaded in the system, and you should be able to view that. Now, just look at that. This is my photo. This is my portal. You'll be able to view the notes from the ACHRP portal. All of them, they've been loaded there. You can see my screen, the one I've shared.
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes, thank
Gandhi,
you.
are there?
I'm able to
can see.
Yes, so I wanted to reassure our participants that the notes are already preloaded in the system. And these notes contain a lot of information. You should not miss this. And well, for what is we usually do, the training has been recorded. So this is how you view the recording. You click open, and you can again now replay the presentation. If you had missed any part at any time, you'll be able to watch the presentation from there. You can see that. And this is always found under my courses. So if you log into your portal, you should find something like that. Then go to my courses. Then under my courses, you scroll down to where which course is this? Competency Iceberg model. There is this column showing presentation, then click view. If you click view, it opens into that window. The PowerPoint presentation loads there, and you can interchange between the presentation there and the video link there. So at all times, you remain totally informed. At the end of the day, and for those who have LinkedIn, you see the link that is showing here, LinkedIn link. See that? Above the table that shows module title, you can always use that on your LinkedIn if you want to show or to display to your followers that you have undertaken this course known as Competency Iceberg model. I'll go back one more time to my courses. Every time I try my best to revamp this particular website so that we are able to have a situation whereby one is able to easily access the portal, and one is able to easily access the learning materials. If you've undertaken a course in the past and you're not able to view your certificates or receipts under my courses, maybe you would need to go back to take courses. Okay, then see if the course is not taken, you select the button there. If you had already paid, enter the transaction code there and submit. I'll approve. If you find your course on this other side of my courses, but the course does not, the course appears pending and you had already made payment, share your payment confirmation, then chat me up on WhatsApp. I am going to do the approval for you. We are already in the last quarter, or moving to the last quarter, is it the third quarter of the year? It's very easy to have your CPD points up in good shape so that you can be able to, by the end of the day, you are able to confirm. This is how you confirm your CPD points. From my courses, you're able to see the number of courses you've already taken. That is, this is, you select the years there. This is 2023 already. You're able to see the courses you've undertaken. You're able to see the number of CPD points that you have. You can be able to print your CPD records activity form. This is what you share with IHRM for them to update your CPD points. Then you're able to print the 2023 CPD activities verification. Instead of printing one certificate at a time, you can print the merged version from the print 2023 CPD activities verification. And if you have any question at any time, this is what I say, and I'll always say that I'm always there for my fellow HR professionals. You can chat with me, you can call me. That is training, I would say, is a calling. And another thing, never miss our training because you didn't have money to participate during that training. You participate when it's not every day we have money. When your situation improves, you'll be able to make payment. With those few remarks, I would want to say that I want to thank everybody. Ada, Gadani, Kipsan, Kisan, thank you. Catherine Gabi, you promised you will train one of these days. I'm still waiting. Janet Doro, it was good to see you. Juliana, you finally joined it. Lavenda, Dereka Ivere, thank you very much. You've been a great admin. And thanks. Thank you very much. Mtange, San. Robert Okumu, Sabrina, thank you for showing up. How is Mombasa?
Mombasa is good.
Yes, I wish everyone can put the video on. Say hi to one another. I don't know how we network without our videos on. James, how does this work?